Morning. Good. All right, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Gillarducci, Director of the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. First of all, I wanted to bring you all here today to provide a quick overview of the current wildfire situations across our state and the massive effort underway across the dozens of state, local, and federal agencies working hard to protect California. Here at the State Operations Center, which is where you're located, and you see behind all of us, the center is currently activated at its highest level, working 24/7 to coordinate the massive response operations on behalf of the state in support of CAL FIRE and the U.S. Forest Service and our local governments. And, of course, on behalf of all of us at OES and all of the agencies that are up here, we really do extend our sincere support and thoughts to all the families and communities who are experiencing loss as a result of these fires. We've had a lot of structural loss, but I'm happy to report so far we have had no deaths, and that is really a very, very important point. The state's going to continue to use every available resource that we have to protect lives and property, and will remain a partner with our local government long after the fires are out. There's still a lot of work that lies ahead. The challenge we're facing is very significant, and you'll learn in a few minutes from briefings from my colleagues at CAL FIRE and the Forest Service on more details and specifics about the fires. But it's important for all Californians to understand that the severity of how our climate-driven conditions are altering the environment and are making these fires move faster and make them more complex and ultimately more dangerous than anything that we faced in the past. We're seeing very gusty winds and are seeing it combined with dry conditions and record drought, making this for a very, very dangerous and severe situation. Right now, we are in a very dynamic and challenging firefight happening concurrently in multiple corners of Northern California, from Siskiyou County all the way down to El Dorado County, and even a new fire in Upper Tulare County. To date, the governor has proclaimed 11 counties under states of emergencies and has secured fire management assistance grants for the counties of El Dorado, Lassen, Plumas, Siskiyou, Trinity, Nevada, and Placer from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. These federal fire management assistance grants enable local, state, and tribal agencies involved in the response to get funds that are necessary to ensure that they've got ongoing support for those fires and get reimbursed for the firefighting costs. Still, even with all of that, the human impact of these fires is significant. There are currently roughly 31,000 Californians under evacuation of some sort. 500 individuals are currently being housed in shelters, and we're using every tool at our disposal to meet the needs of these folks and the challenge overall. Currently, there are over 10,000 personnel working on these fires from state, local, and federal agencies, as well as 766 engines, 172 hand crews, 200 unparalleled among states, is currently working hard, but is stretched. We've deployed many resources from that system, including going out to other states, and we were able to get some resources from Utah to come in to support this. But even at that, there are fires, major fires in the 12 western states, and so resources are really running thin throughout the western United States. And so even getting EMAC grant resources has been responders, our local government fire agencies through the mutual aid system, our city councils, our city managers, our mayors, and our county executives that are supporting the system. Without that support, we could not have the kind of resources in support from the fire service that we are getting. So this has truly been a one team, one fight approach across all of government. We've also worked with our colleagues in other states. As I mentioned, beyond the Utah folks, we have Louisiana and West Virginia National Guard. And General Baldwin from the National Guard is here today. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But the National Guard has been a great supporter of this effort across these various states. And even with the fires still burning, we also are moving into recovery where we can, trying to concurrently balance the response with the recovery. And we've already initiated hazardous materials teams to go in to remove household hazardous waste and other hazardous materials in the multiple counties where fires have occurred as the first stage of returning the damaged properties to their owners. This will ultimately evolve into debris clearance operations as the fire incident managers allow that to happen. And we also have doing damage assessments on the ground to document the extent of losses so that we can maximize our request for federal aid, which we're working on a request to the president for the governor to request to the president a major disaster declaration. If you've been evacuated, it's important to know, or if you've lost your home, it's also important to know that you follow your local county updates for how to apply for aid. There are local assistance centers that are being established, but you can also go online at their websites of your local county Office of Emergency Services, or you can come to Cal OES's, this agency's website and get information on the wildfires. Those local assistance centers, as they get put up, are important because they will have a number of state and local and federal agencies and private sector to provide you information on how you can navigate through what is truly a challenging time. Cal OES remains a quick partner with all of our fire victims and survivors, and will be with you throughout the days and months to come. In closing, let me just say that I want all Californians to really think through being prepared, to being vigilant over the circumstances that we are facing. We are not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination with regards to these fire conditions. In fact, we're just beginning in the fire season, and we're already in very, very critical conditions. If you are told, if a fire starts in your area, you are told to evacuate, please do not wait, evacuate. That's what we want you to do. It's critical. Remember, material items can be replaced, but your life cannot. The other thing is that we've been working on with sheriffs and law enforcement to do preemptive evacuations in some cases where we know the fire is coming, and you may say, well, you know, the fire's right not next to me, and that's purposeful. One, it clears out the area and makes sure that the firefighters have access to your area, but it also makes sure that they don't have to be worrying about rescue instead of doing firefighting, and it does protect you. And I think that's a testament of why we have not actually had a lot of life loss in this particular fire siege, is that this is a new strategy, and we want to try to keep people out of harm's way. And so I can't thank enough our law enforcement, mutual aid, the highway patrol, our sheriffs who have been really steadfast in making sure this has all come together. And we'll learn a little bit about that further today from our partners at the CHP. So each county has alerts systems. You can sign up for getting alerts about evacuations and fire information. You certainly can go to CAL FIRE's website and get that, and you can come to Cal OES's website and be able to click on a link to be able to sign up for alerts in your respective county. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my partner and our Director of California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE, Chief Tom Porter. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ghilarducci, and thank you all for being here. This is a particularly difficult time, and one where all of the mutual aid system is being stretched. The response, the law enforcement, everything is really stretched. And I can't thank you all enough, those who are supporting, your communities that are sending fire engines and law enforcement officers, and overhead. We really need it, and it's making a difference in this firefight that we're in, this siege that we're in. Reflecting just for a moment on last year. Last year at this time, we were deploying teams all over California to lightning fires that had occurred and turned into complexes, and ultimately became the biggest and most acres ever burned in California's history that we have been tracking. This year, we're on track to do just the same. We are ahead of acres burned to date at this point. We continue to have initial attack fires, 34 just in the last 24 hours. None of those have become large and damaging. So we're continuing to meet our initial attack goals and needs within and around communities, but also feeding the fires that need resources and making sure that we're keeping those fires as best we can from continuing to damage and destroy communities and infrastructure along the way. So the biggest fire in states in the state right now is the Dixie fire. Dixie fire is the first fire that we're aware of that has burned from the west side of the mountain range all the way over and to the valley floor on the east side of the mountain range. We don't have any record of that happening before. The fire has been burning for approximately 35 days. It is exceedingly resistant to control. While we've had some successes and we've had some lines that we've held and made good progress on, when the winds come, we're finding that fires are spotting in some cases miles outside of that fire because of the sheer magnitude of the material that's burning and the heat that's being produced, carrying large embers, chunks of wood, dropping them way out in front of the fire in receptive fuel beds. So this is not going to end anytime soon. We have to all be vigilant. We need to know when new fires are starting. Call 911. Make sure that you're reporting those fires. Make sure that you're being vigilant not to start fires by your own activities. But then, lo and behold, while this is the second largest fire in California's history now, the Dixie, and the 14th most damaging fire in California's history, now we have the Caldor fire. Caldor fire is in a very, very difficult spot. We've seen the King fire burn nearly in the same area. We have identified this decades ago and continue to work through what is called the Fire Adapted 50 program, which is a fuel reduction program, series of fuel breaks, shaded fuel breaks, fuel reduction project work, prescribed burns. All of that is being tested as we speak. That work is going to make a difference, but it also points to what we need to be doing more of in the future. And in the case that I mentioned, when fire is jumping outside of its perimeter, sometimes miles, sometimes those fuel projects won't stop a fire. Sometimes they're just used to slow it enough to get people out of the way, which brings me to people out of the way. Getting people out of the way of these fires is the best way for us to be able to protect your communities. We need you to evacuate. We need you to evacuate early. Everybody is going to be sucking smoke for a long time. The fire is going to come and go the way the fire is going to come and go. These are fuels-driven fires as much as weather-driven fires, and the drought conditions are allowing for that fuel condition to take fire wherever there's a receptive path that it's going to go. So please, please heed the warnings, and then when you're asked to get out, because we need you out of the way so we can protect your homes from these fires. It's the only way we can do it. If you're in our way in doing that, it might not only be your home that's lost, but it might be your neighbors as well. So, further, big picture from the CAL FIRE resources side. We have every CAL FIRE employee fully engaged in this siege. from Southern California all the way to the northern border. Everybody is supplying resources or supporting in some way. We have 6 all-hazard Type 1 incident management teams. Of the 6 that we have in the state, 3 of them are deployed as we speak. 1 of them is on hardcover. That leaves 2 additional in the back pocket if we have a need for them. Right now, we're hoping that won't be the case because, as I said, everybody's already working. We'll have to move some things around. But we have those 6 teams that are available, and they are proving very critical again this year in helping bring calm to these chaotic situations. Not only are the resources stretched, but they're being used in a very strategic and surgical way. The unfortunate thing is that these fires continue to get bigger, but we're surging resources into communities to protect and reduce the impact to communities as best we can and save as much as we can. And in some cases, that has been effective in keeping fire out of places like Chester. We surged resources. We herded the fire around Chester. 110,000 acres of timberland burned during one burning cycle on that fire. It did not burn Chester. But there's a side problem with all of this fire that's going on in the landscape. It is happening in California's timber basket. And I say that very specifically because California's timber basket is a huge part of California's climate initiative and carbon sequestration goals in the future. We are seeing generational destruction of forests because of what these fires are doing. This is going to take a long time to come back from. And our timber industry partners are feeling a very, very big pinch during this. They're seeing their investment and their good work in sequestering carbon going away. So long-term effects, short-term, we need to surge resources, protect communities, yes, but we also have to put these fires out. In order to put these fires out, we need to keep from having more fires. So vigilance, vigilance, vigilance for every Californian. Also know every acre in California can and will burn someday. Just make sure that you're ready when it does. With that, I'm going to pass the mic to Tony Scardina, who is the Deputy Regional Forester for U.S. Forest Service Region 5 here in California. Tony?
Good morning. Thanks, Tom. First, let me start by just saying that to Californians, we know you're going through a lot right now. Communities have been impacted, a lot of smoke in the air, and our hearts, our thoughts are with you. We are doing everything between federal, state, and local government to do everything we can to suppress these fires. I'm going to give you a little bit of the national update for the Forest Service and then bring that down to California. Right now, when you look in the West, there is extreme drought across most of the western states, which is indicative of the type of fire behavior that we're seeing. Right now, there's over 100 large active fires across most of the western states, and the Forest Service and the federal agencies are preparedness level 5, which is the highest of our preparedness levels out of 1 through 5, meaning that resources are stretched, there's large fire activity across most of the range, and there's drought conditions leading to extreme fire behavior. In Northern California, we are also at preparedness level 5 due to the amount of large fire activity. We have 7 large fires across Northern California that we're currently managing, many that we're managing with local government as well as in concert with CAL FIRE. In Southern California, we're at preparedness level 3. There's been some moisture conditions, but that will only last so long. As we get into September and October, we expect to see drying out in the southern part of California and fire activity to pick up. Nationally, there are 10,000 federal firefighters deployed. 6,500 of those are in California. So 65% of the resources that we have federally are within the state of California, despite all of that activity across the other western states, again, indicative of the type of fire behavior that we're experiencing. So what's our strategy? We continue to maintain our resources across the state so that we have effective initial attack capability. One thing that we want to do is to continue to suppress new fires so we don't add new fires to the landscape. Our success in that has been 98%. So we'll continue to stay aggressive. On-the-ground resources as well as aircraft are critical to that strategy. The other piece that we're doing is that we are going to do everything we can to fully suppress large fires and keep them as small as we can. As Tom mentioned, with the extreme fire behavior, that is difficult to do. We're going to continue to put as much aircraft and resources on the ground as we can, but keeping fires small at this point is quite difficult. And then we're going to prioritize our resources around protecting life, getting people out safely, protecting property, including the timberlands that Tom talked about, and then other resources after that. So that's how we prioritize our aircraft and our on-the-ground resources. The other thing that we're doing in the state right now is we have large closure areas around fires. The importance of that is to keep the public safe. We're also looking at the potential for broader closures across Northern California until the situation abates. We're able to get more resources into the state, and that is to keep the public safe, keep fires off the landscape, and keep our firefighters sustained over a long period of time. Our folks have been fighting fire for nearly 2 months now. They're tired, they're fatigued, they're digging lines 16 hours a day for 14 days straight, and we're doing everything we can for their health and safety as well. And again, I want to thank the communities out there that have been impacted. They're going through a lot. We're all going to work together here to help them through that and get through that recovery process. With that, I'm going to hand it over to General Baldwin with CalGuard. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony, and good morning, everybody. The CalGuard has 970 soldiers, airmen, and sailors supporting firefighting efforts throughout the state. That includes 122 military members from the states that Director Ghilarducci mentioned, plus the state of Nevada and Wyoming's National Guard and the United States Air Force Reserve. We're flying 20 different types of aircraft in support of fire suppression operations. That includes firefighting helicopters, firefighting air tankers, medical evacuation helicopters, and manned and unmanned situational awareness aircraft that are assisting with fire mapping and damage assessment. We're also using our space-based systems to do initial fire detections to help CAL FIRE and U.S. Forest Service pounce on fires when they break out, and we can also use those systems for fire mapping and damage assessment. On the ground, we have 25 hand crews that are organized as both Type 1 and Type 2 hand crews that are supporting firefighting efforts, mainly on the Dixie fire. We also have 72 military policemen that are working in support of our partners in the Highway Patrol and the Plumas County Sheriff's Department, manning traffic control points to keep people out of harm's way up on the Dixie fire. And then finally, we've just mobilized 3 very large fuel tankers to provide logistic support to CAL FIRE up in Redding. And I'll be followed by Chief Mike Dust from the California Highway Patrol.
Thank you, General. Once again, I'm Mike Dust. I'm from CHP. I'm the Chief over Valley Division. And first and foremost, on behalf of Commissioner Ray, our hearts go out to all those affected by these fires, not only locally but statewide. And I also want to thank all the first responders who are also affected by these fires through evacuations and some of them losing their homes, and yet they still come to work to serve these communities. To that end, the California Highway Patrol statewide is providing assistance to local sheriffs, to fire services in support of traffic control points and evacuations. It's been said earlier about the need to get out during warnings. There's a difference between a warning and an order. When warnings occur, traffic trickles out of those communities. When an order happens, that turns into traffic jams, and it becomes very difficult then for people to escape. The CHP mans those traffic control points for the safety of the community. And one thing that we've noticed during all of these fires is once the fire is out of view, you might still see a CHP car sitting there. And the officer there gets asked questions, and we don't mind answering any questions that you have, but some of those questions are, why can't I go? Why can't I go? There's no fire here. Why can't I go up to where my house is? And the reason is because there could be something around the corner that you don't know about. There's fire apparatus, there's hoses across roads, there's downed power lines and power poles, there's downed trees, contaminated water. There's all kinds of things that need to be mitigated and restored before we can open those roads. So we just ask for your patience for our folks during those. And thank you once again. And Director Ghilarducci, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, so as you can see, there's, this state effort being coordinated statewide here at the State Operations Center, all these agencies, local, state, and federal, and private, coming together in this coordinated effort to respond to these fires. Again, we're early in the season. I think we're going to have a very, very challenging summer months as it continues to be warm and dry, and we are in drought conditions. So we just ask for everyone's cooperation, patience, and this isn't really just a government solution. This is a whole of community solution. So every citizen in California is a partner with us in this, and your preparedness level and your actions really do matter in this whole thing. So we thank you all for your cooperation with that. With that, this team will be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Hi, question, I think it's on Florida or Tony. If I'm not mistaken, this morning, the total number of personnel on the Calvert fire was 240-something, which seems awfully small for the size of that fire and the destruction that's wrought already. Do you have any updated number of how many people you would be able to bring in anytime soon?
Well, I will start, and yes, the 209 showed 200 and I think it was 47 or something like that. It was about 250 personnel. That doesn't show what was coming in day shift this morning. So I know for a fact that we called up off of the Dixie fire an additional 6 strike teams of engines. That's 5 engines each. Out of Reno, they were R&R in Reno. They were coming onto the fire this morning. That's just one set of resources that were coming in from other areas as well. And so I don't know if Tony has any more specifics on that, but that was the 209 from last night, last night and this morning, but it didn't reflect what would be there as of this morning. And the team just took over that fire at 0700 this morning, which was after last night's 209.
Any other questions?
I was going to ask how many acres, if you guys know, have burned so far with the Caldor fire?
Tom does have.
I do have that. We have, as of this morning, again, from the 209, it's 53,772 acres, and 47,272 of those acres just burned yesterday. So total was 53,772.
Just to add one thing to give an example of how stretched resources are. So like CAL FIRE, they have 6 incident command teams that help manage these large fires. The Forest Service in Region 5 has 10 incident command teams, and all of them are deployed. There's also federal incident command teams, and every federal incident command team in the country is on an active fire. With Caldor, we had no team available, and it shows the type of partnership that we have. Tom and his leadership and CAL FIRE was willing to help assist with that situation. And that's the type of work that we do together. When we're stretched for resources and we need to help each other out, that's what we do. I want to thank CAL FIRE and Tom for doing that and just kind of display the type of partnership that we're in to try and get these fires suppressed.
Quick question for the Forest Service. I know you had mentioned earlier that the Forest Service is going to be considering broader evacuations in Northern California specifically in order to help keep more of us safe. Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so right now we have closure orders around the 7 active fires that we have to keep the public out of areas where there's firefighting activity and keep people safe. We are taking a look at the conditions that we have right now with extreme drought, extreme active fire behavior, combined with the lack of resources. So if we have a new fire start and we're not able to put significant resources on it to fight it, we're thinking about, can the public in that situation be safe? Is not having the public on federal lands for a period of time going to help us reduce new fire starts? And that's a hard decision to make. We did that last year for the first time in decades. And it's not something that we take lightly. It's not something that we want to do. But with the conditions, we need as little fire starts as possible on that landscape. And so we're having that conversation, thinking about, is that the right move to make? And we're looking at probably around Labor Day weekend. Trying to get through Labor Day weekend, we believe that some of the conditions in other parts of the country are going to lighten up a little bit, which would hopefully bring more resources available and be in a better firefighting scenario. So still in that conversation with our partners in the state, as well as local leaders to make that choice.
Are you currently pulling resources from other fires to come up to the Caldor and Dixie fire? And how do you determine that if you are?
Yes, so what I'll say generally is that in California we have 2 operation centers, a northern operations center and a southern operations center that includes all of the partners, federal, state, and local. The leadership, the fire leadership in those centers look at every fire in the state. They look at our priorities around protecting life and infrastructure and property, and they put resources on those fires based on those priorities. So they're trying to do everything they can to, one, look at, for example, the Dixie fire, lots of communities at risk, lots of infrastructure, private timberlands, things of that nature, and balance that with other fires that have also values at risk. So right now, as Tom mentioned, we may do a surge where we bring resources from one fire to the other to try and dampen that fire situation. But that is part of the problem with that many fires on the landscape and values at risk. Having that balance and resources to meet our suppression strategies can be difficult, but that's how we prioritize across the state. Tom, you may want to add anything to that.
Yeah, because I mentioned it, I know that the engines that were coming out of Reno to the Caldor fire this morning, they were assigned to the Dixie fire up until last night. They were released from the Dixie fire and sent straight over the hill because they were the closest resources available to get into the Caldor fire at the right time. So what we're doing is, as Tony mentioned, we are moving resources around as needed, sharing among the incidents and sharing the right type of resources among the incidents. Sometimes type 3 engines, wildland engines are needed on one fire, and type 1, more structure protection type engines are needed on the other fire, and we can swap and move things around. Our coordination centers at North Ops and South Ops are very adept at doing that and working with those incident management teams to make that happen. Both the federal and the state incident management teams fall under that general coordination at those 2 locations, North Ops, South Ops.
Resources stretched so far right now. Is there a plan to bring in more sources to help with these fires?
There is. We've been working hard, and this is probably a team approach. One team, one fight on this. We put in resource orders from the fires themselves. So those get filled as fills are available. That goes to all of the California mutual aid system, including Forest Service, the state, and all of our local government partners. Once we exhaust that, we start to look at other places to go, out of state through our EMAC process, and that is run through Cal OES. Again, the orders originate at the fire, go to North Ops, South Ops, and then they get farmed into various places for additional resources. So we ask Cal OES to bring in resources from out of state. Reach out, grab those resources that are available. We did that early on. We still are working through a list of 150 engines that have been requested in that system. Beyond that system and our mutual aid across the nation that way, we also have looked into what we can do to bring in resources from out of country. out-of-country resources, and I don't know, do you want to speak to this, or you want me to just give it a?
Cover and then I can.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll cover it from my perspective as state kind of representative. We're having a very difficult time. There are resources that are out there that are being shared internationally, but those resources are already committed. And so here's the bigger situation. Not only do we have fires going on in the western and throughout the United States, Canada is burning as well. And so they have large fires that they have resources that they have moved from, let's say, Mexico. That takes the resources that we would normally get from Mexico out of play. It also takes Canada's resources out of play because they don't have resources to give. They're doing the same thing we're doing. Then there's the overseas pool. The overseas pool is severely impacted by all that's going on in the COVID environment. And so we are not getting resources that if we were not in pandemic days, we were in normal kind of pattern, if there is a normal anymore, we would be able to pull those resources in that are in the southern hemisphere and bring them in because they're not in fire season. However, that's not happening this year for the reasons I just mentioned. And do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, like Tom, I would just say we always look at every tool possible. When you look at other resources like international or Department of Defense, that's where Tom's mentioning. One, remember, we're in a pandemic environment, so when we're thinking about bringing resources from other places, other countries, we've got to think about that. With the Delta variant, we have seen a pickup and spread in the crews. We've gone back to additional mitigations to protect them, and that is working very well, but we need to be very vigilant about that. The other thing, too, is it takes food, it takes boots, it takes equipment to house more people. And when you look at the situation nationally and in the state right now, evacuations, well, those people need hotels, and we got to be careful not to take that space. When it comes to supply chains for food and other things, there's some complexities around that. So as we look at those options, and they may be obvious, there's some logistical factors as well as the COVID environment that we're factoring in before we make that decision.
Chief Porter, follow-up. When you talk about bringing resources, 30 engines or so from Reno, first of all, clarification, were those Nevada resources, or did they just happen to be parked in Reno?
For clarification, they just happened to be parked in Reno. They were California resources.
And there's no easy answer to this one, but is now the time to be pulling resources away from the Dixie fire?
And that's a great question, and one that I'm going to reflect back to the beginning of this press conference. We are surging resources to where the greatest need is at the time of that need. And while the Dixie is going to continue to have difficult times, it has more resources than any other fire in the state. Therefore, by shifting resources around and making sure that we have all of the branches and divisions of the Dixie Fire staffed, and then using other resources and bringing them down to the call door, that's the way we're doing this. So it's a surge kind of to where the greatest need is. And there are some times when we need to put resources where the impacts to lives and property are greatest. And so we're taking resources away from a fire that has less of that potential at the moment than the call door does at the moment. And I wanted to add one thing from the previous question, and that is I neglected, and not because I don't think of them daily, but our National Guard partners are huge in surging as well. And early on, again, through the mutual aid system and working with Cal OES, we called up our ability to put what we call Type 2 hand crews in place. They are hugely helpful in making sure we have the boots on the ground to hold fire line, and then take the Forest Service hotshot or the interagency hotshot crews and our other Type 1 fire crews and put them on the hot areas of fire. So it's a huge partnership and one that we exercised early this summer.
I just want to just add a little more thing to that. Resource management in a state of our size and complexity is always a very ongoing strategic effort. We have to make sure that we balance our resources off across the state. We have to consider what we don't know is going to happen tomorrow. We could have an earthquake. We could have some other major event. Plus, we have to make sure our local governments have all the resources they need to protect their communities at large. So we always have a buffer as we manage resources. And to Tom's point, we may divert for life-saving and property protection on a fire that is critical. We want to keep these fires as small as possible and get those resources on them. And then it becomes a balance across the state. We've talked a lot about how we're stretched. We are stretched, but we also are continuing to work through the system and making sure we've got a little reserve to be able to address these new fires as they break.
Question for you. So how fast do these alerts go out to these communities? How fast can they get the warnings ahead of time when the fires start approaching?
So really the incident managers that are responding and setting up, doing the assessment of what parts of the communities need to be evacuated and how many, that's coordinated with the local law enforcement. And then they push that messaging out through a variety of sources. One could be through a county-run alert and warning network, something like a Nixle or a Code Red, and there are different companies that have that. We ask you to go and sign up and go to your county Office of Emergency Services, sign up for those alerts. The other way is through the wireless emergency alert system. That's a national system that we can push out information that gets pushed out by the local government or can be pushed out here at state OES. Local law enforcement, CHP, sheriff, police, they will go door to door and go through the community. Public address systems, they may have high-low sirens that are notifying the community, be knocking on your door to get people out. It happens relatively fast. Once they get the notice that an area identified, they'll also put up maps so that people can see what's going on, and then we want people to move out as rapidly as they possibly can.
And second question. The Dixie fire is now the second largest fire. I think a couple of weeks ago, maybe somebody said it was the single largest fire.
It is single.
Yeah, let me clarify. We, on the official list that CAL FIRE maintains, we count fires that are complexes and single start fires on the same list. So splitting hairs, the Dixie is the single start largest fire of any other in the state's history. However, the August complex is still the largest fire, and it's quite a bit larger. It's 1.2 million acres. We're about half that size, a little over half that size with the Dixie as a single start. And the Fly fire is in there as well. So even if you take those acres out, it's still the single largest for single start.
Can you elaborate on the mitigation efforts that are being done to protect our firefighters as the Delta variant is spreading? As you had mentioned, someone had mentioned that you had seen an increase in cases or positive cases.
Yeah, I think actually if you go first, and I'll go second on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the mitigations we follow are clearly in line with CDC as a starting point. So back to masking, all of our folks in incidents as well as on the crews are masking whenever they can. Obviously, firefighters that are on the line fighting fire cannot wear a mask at all times because of the conditions that they're in. We're also looking at some testing protocols of how we can test our firefighters so that before they end up on the fire line, and we can catch it early and also then separate those crews. We also have mitigations in place. When you look at the past, we used to have large fires where camps of thousands of firefighters and others would be together and they would eat together and be in the same space together. So what we do now is we try and spread those camps out, keep people small, and also not have the crews interact with one another so that if one crew does have a situation where there is a positive case, then it limits the spread to other crews and doesn't carry as a community effect. We've also been proactive on our incidents of having local health departments work with us, putting vaccination clinics within the fire camps. Oftentimes, the firefighters, they work a 14-day assignment, then they have 3 days off. At the end of the assignment, before they go home, then they have the option of that choice with the clinic being there, and that's been really beneficial with a lot of our local health clinics. Like I said, we had a little bit of an uptick early on in the season, what I would consider to be an insignificant impact to our capability, and we've done a good job in the past few weeks of leveling that out with a couple additional measures.
Yeah, and much the same with the CAL FIRE side. We've actually seen a much lower rate in camp settings this year than we did last year. Vaccinations are helping with that considerably. Masking in congregate spaces is helping as well. And then another piece is we have firefighters that have been out for a very long time. They've only been with their firefighting group, and so they're not getting a lot of external exposure either.
Maybe a couple more. Anything else, sir?
A question for Tony. And you kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago, but the Calder fire for the first 24, 36 hours kind of behaved itself, and then it blew up on Monday night. Could it have been doused and brought totally under control?
Yeah, I think between the federal, state, and local resources, as we always do, we did everything we could to have aggressive initial attack, nothing different. One of the limiting factors when it came to that fire is there was quite a significant smoke over top of that fire, limiting aircraft capability. And that's the way on several fires. Once we have situations where smoke settles in that air, airspace and visibility become limited, and the ability to use that tool on initial attack becomes limited. So aircraft is a really good tool on initial attack because it helps slow the fire down so that our hand crews can then get on the ground and catch up to it and then get line around it. And there were several limiting factors on the cow door: tough terrain, difficult spot, limited aircraft capability, but we still had the same type of initial attack response we would have with our partners as we would on any incident that we're trying to suppress at this point.
Is there any word on if you guys will be calling in the super tanker from Colorado?
I think you're talking about the 747.
Go ahead. Yes.
Are you talking about the 747?
Yeah.
So that 747 is no longer in the inventory. The owners of that have transferred it over to a cargo aircraft. But the large air tankers that are available that are really private are either under contract by the Forest Service or call when needed contract here at CAL FIRE. And we're using all the various heavy lift aircraft that we can, including the National Guard, what they call MAFs, which we have a number of them here in California from throughout the country. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.